Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Ayşe Süberker. The UN has called out those who may have been complicit in possible war crimes in Yemen. A recent report states that air raids and starvation tactics perpetrated by a Saudi-led coalition couldn't have happened without support from countries like the US, the UK and France. Houthi rebels backed by Iran were also on a list of those responsible. The report came just days after airstrikes by the Saudi coalition killed scores of civilians. Abu Bakr al-Shamahi has this report.
The airstrikes hit the prison at night. It happened in Yemen's Dhamar province. About 100 people are believed to have been killed in the Saudi-led coalition attack, launched on Sunday. The Saudis said that they targeted a Houthi rebel weapons depot and that it wasn't a prison. But the reality is that according to the Red Cross, most of the dead were prisoners. And the horrible irony is that many of them were anti-Houthi fighters waiting for a prisoner swap. Saudi allies, in other words. Yemen's anti-Houthi alliance is fraying, and it was another airstrike last week that brought the internal conflict out into the open. The United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia's main partner in Yemen, attacked Yemeni government forces in Aden, fighters who are part of the Saudi coalition. Yemen's Minister of Information called it a treacherous attack that showed the UAE's lack of acceptance of government efforts to restore its institutions, and that the UAE is making a relentless effort to divide Yemen through a regional militia, the southern separatists who the UAE supports, that don't represent the south of the country. That goes to the root of the flare-up between the Yemeni government and the UAE. Abu Dhabi has actively supported and funded militias in Yemen's south that want the country to split into North and South Yemen, like before unification in 1990. While those militias officially back the Yemeni government in its fight against the Houthi rebels, they are in effect rulers of much of southern Yemen, and have formed a political body, the Southern Transitional Council. In August, the group, known as the STC, took control of Aden, Yemen's temporary capital, and pushed on towards other southern provinces. Yemeni government forces tried to reverse the tide by re-entering parts of Aden on August the 28th. But after the Emirati airstrikes, government forces were pushed back again. The flag of the former South Yemen now flies in Aden, and the STC is cementing their control, and their supporters argue that the Yemeni government shouldn't come back.
5 years is enough. 5 years we have been suffering from the corruption. They stay in hotels and we are suffering from hunger and poverty. We must stand with the STC. Enough with the corruption. Enough with the injustice.
The whole situation has created an awkward predicament for Saudi Arabia. On the one hand, they back the Yemeni government and have allowed government figures to be based in Saudi Arabia, including Yemeni President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi. From there, they've been able to criticize the UAE. And yet, on the other hand, they have chosen not to publicly rebuke the UAE for undermining the Yemeni government, nor have the Saudis been able to stop them. Instead, the Saudis have made a show of unity with the Emiratis and are hoping to bring the Yemeni government and the southern separatists to talks in Riyadh. But the divide between the two supposed allies now seems to be a chasm, and it might destroy any hopes the Saudis still have for success in Yemen. Abu Bakr al-Shamahi, Straight Talk.
And joining me now is Kab al-Taubani, who is the co-founder and executive director of the NGO Women for Yemen Network, and Tarek Charkawi, who is the manager of TRT World Research Center. Welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you here. Kab, let me start with you. The latest United Nations report said the UK, US, France, and Iran might all be complicit in war crimes in Yemen. What do you make of that? And will this report have a significant impact on those countries mentioned?
We think that Yemen has gone beyond having conflict dispute. What is going now in Yemen is proxy war, and we think such report will put pressure on those countries to stop mingling in Yemen's issues. And we think if we continue pushing through human rights reports as such, we will stop selling arms and providing support, military support or intelligence support to the conflict parties, the international conflict parties involved in Yemen.
We know that the US Congress wants to end military involvement in Yemen, but Trump vetoed it. So do you believe that will US be able to put pressure on Saudi Arabia, or US will end its military involvement after this report, Tarek?
I think this report is one step forward. It's not going to end the war immediately, but it's a good step. I totally agree with you that Trump initially was not very warm and in trying to stop the alliance from bombing Yemen and from stopping the war altogether. However, there is a growing discontent, even a rare bipartisan collaboration in Congress that is kind of fed up with the situation in Yemen. And I think also the fact that, for example, Wall Street Journal reported on August 27, just a week ago, that the Trump administration is opening talks in Oman with the Houthis soon, is an indication that things are starting to change.
So is Saudi Arabia's anti-Houthi coalition alliance, let's say, fraying? And what kind of an impact it would have if it collapsed on Yemen's future?
I think that the coalition is in very bad shape right now. I think even though they're trying to mask the unease between the two parties, the UAE and the Saudi Arabia, I think there is a big suspicion between both parties, and Saudis are feeling that they have done the wrong bet in this war, that they have done the hard part, but yet the UAE is trying to undermine their allies in the south, and they are undermining President Hadi. So now they're feeling that they have been maybe the useful fool of this operation, and that the UAE is in fact having its own program, its own political and security agenda being implemented, while the Saudis had no real strategy in this war.
What is the United Arab Emirates strategy?
In Yemen?
Yeah.
I think all of them are agreeing on undermining the state of Yemen. If you read the latest UN panel report, you will see that there was systematic undermining of the presence of the Yemeni government in security or in presence in the south, in the areas where the Houthi has been kicked out. So when you see this, you see that, and also when you see how the Saudis are holding the Yemeni government under arrest, the president Hadi is not able to move or to go back to Yemen. You can tell, like, even Iran by the Houthi proxy forces, they all agreeing on undermining the Yemeni state. And the problem now is, and the dispute, maybe it's over which parts should be affiliated, because Aden is very strategic,
yes.
So Emirates are fighting so hard to have it, and the Saudis are using now these kind of the Yemeni government to attack. It allows to somehow, like the Yemeni government, to attack Emirates. But at the end, if this political debate over if there is now a dispute between Emirates and Saudi should not make Saudis not out of the plane, because it has led this coalition. And it said it will support the legitimacy of Yemen. What has happened is the complete opposite.
Yeah, so Tarek, I'm just going to ask this. Yemen's president is outside of the country, and the Yemeni government lost control of two strategically important cities. So how legitimate is this internationally backed government of Yemen?
Unfortunately, I can say that what was supposed to be an act and a coalition in favor of legitimacy has been actually a dagger that was implanted in the side of the legitimacy in Yemen. What is happening is really a treachery. Is an act of epic treachery, actually. And what it means is the legitimacy of President Hadi has been undermined. He has lost first the capital, Sana'a, to the Houthis in 2015. Now he has lost the interim capital, which is Aden. And he's controlling very few pockets here and there, but ultimately it doesn't look very, very, very good or very positive for him.
Given all the latest developments, all those attacks which killed hundreds of people, unfortunately, Houthis, which are backed by Iran, they've been quite silent. What do you make of that, Kaukab?
They weren't silent because they are already having their deployment. But now I think the Emirates is kind of dividing Yemen into two states, and this is in the favor of the Houthis. And in our opinion, the Emirates are not only working on division, it works on making Yemen a militia-dominated country. And unfortunately, the current rise of armed militia like the Security Belt and this Transitionist Southern Council, it is not going to make Yemen stabilized, and it is not a representation of the South movement or the South
What do you
peaceful
think
cause.
needs to happen furthermore to change the situation in Yemen? Because we're talking about the world's most dramatic humanitarian crisis there.
We have been saying this over and over as peace and human rights activists. They should not follow or backing up interests. They should back up values, and they should support the legitimacy of the Yemen as a state. You cannot expect that the Saudis and the Emirates and the Iran will support Yemen a state, and you're not also by supporting militia coming to the dialogue. You have, like, for example, I'll give you an example, like the southern people, like the southern valid cause, they were asking to be engaged in the peaceful cause. And when they start having the arms, there are now some calls to engage them. So there was a rewarding violence mentality. And the current mentality or mindset to manage the peace cause is based on power and violence rewarding, not in sharing. And that's why you see peaceful or the other minorities or the other groups are excluded, including women as well.
Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Last March, one community in the German capital Berlin woke up to a senseless crime. Their house of worship, the Koca Sinan Mosque, was burned in a deliberate arson attack. Now, after more than a year without a proper place to pray, a new mosque is being built. But questions still remain on who was behind the attack and why the perpetrators haven't been caught. Yunus Paksoy has more from Berlin.
A raging fire breaks the darkness on an otherwise quiet night in Berlin. After burning for hours, the Koca Sinan Mosque lays in ruins. The March 2018 attack by unknown assailants sent shockwaves across Germany and beyond. With nowhere to go, people prayed in the street just across from the mosque's charred remains. A year ago, they moved here. But the crime still raises more questions than answers.
Camilere, mescitlere veya kiliselere hiç fark etmez.
Mosques, churches, it doesn't matter. I still have no answer in me as to why. I still have not been able to figure out what kind of a mindset the perpetrator had. How can a person think of something like this against the house of God? Believe me, I still cannot decipher it. You are asking me about my emotions. My home was burned down.
Today, Bayram Türk is busy building his new home. On top of the emotional burden has been a financial one, $1.5 million to rebuild the mosque.
The community seems to be rising from the ashes after the arson, as a new house of worship is being built here. But the fear and memories of the attack are still fresh.
Mustafa Karabulut has been the manager of this mosque since it opened in 2005.
I didn't think at first that the whole mosque was burned down. Having seen it though, I couldn't hold back my tears for 3 days. I used to go to a corner to not cry, but I was not able to keep it in me. It hurt me that much.
It wasn't only the Turkish community that prayed there. Muslims of all nationalities called it home. People like Selam from North Macedonia.
I get a very bad feeling that such things happen in Berlin. My kids or myself could have been there too. Such things happening to mosques, churches, or synagogues. These are houses of God. My emotions were hurt.
Today, people say they are upset that the crime hasn't been solved yet, and German authorities have not taken any action.
Polis ekiplerimiz
The police ask us questions like, who do you suspect? Were there such attacks before? And we've provided the necessary information, but we have received nothing at all as to who perpetrated it up until this point. The police conducted their investigation, but there is nothing.
Daha şu saate kadar hiçbir bilgi almadık.
We asked the police and the prosecutor's office in Berlin about the allegations, but so far they have not responded. In the last 2 years, Germany has seen about 2,000 incidents that have been categorized as anti-Muslim, and almost 100 of them were direct attacks on mosques. Despite facing hatred, people here continue to pray, hoping such hostility never returns again. Yunus Paksoy, Straight Talk.
And joining me now is Linda Hyuki, who is an analyst who specializes in Islam in Europe. She is also a contributor to the European Islamophobia Report. And Erhan Doğan, who is the Vice Chair of the Political Science and International Relations Department at Marmara University. Welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you here. The piece once again reminded us of the grim picture in which the Muslims live in Europe. We all know that there has been a rise in the Islamophobic attacks in Germany, where just recently a German soldier with Turkish roots was attacked on the grounds that he cannot wear German uniform. And also there is this far-right anti-immigration party's success in the latest elections. So Erhan, what has been going on in Germany?
It seems that there are some deep-rooted problems in German politics, and Angela Merkel's brave attitude regarding the welcoming policy of migrants did not help this kind of deep-rooted reactions in German politics to slow down. And it seems that we can see it after the last election results and with the rise of this AfD in German politics. It seems that German people, at least a fraction of German people, are not happy with this migrant welcoming policies of the German government. This is visible with the outcome of the election results, as I said before. In my opinion, we have to look deeper in order to understand what is going on in Europe and also in Germany. The problem is not just related with winning of a political party some votes in German elections, which were not won by similar parties in the past. In my opinion, the main problem is related with the regression that we see in European economies in general, but this is not particularly true for Germany because Germany was the benefactor of the EU initiative, as you all know. If you look to other countries, we can say it more so, but in Germany, there is a unrest among the people who vote for AfD, it seems. What is the reason of this unrest? The visible reason is the welcoming of migrants by the government, presence and vocal attitudes of migrant communities living in Germany. But there are some other problems like losing the welfare benefits.
Yeah, we're going to get back to that, but I want to stick with Germany again. Linda, the recent report found that there were over 800 crime attacks against Muslims only in the first 9 months of 2018. And experts say the number is actually much more higher, but they are not reported.
Yes.
Why do you think they're underreported? Are people afraid?
Actually, yes, it has been also proven by other reports that the Muslim population as well as other minorities, they do not necessarily trust the authorities in such a manner that they would easily go and report any hate crimes that are targeting them. And with hate crimes, we can, of course, talk about hate speech or violent attacks or even attacks against properties such as mosques or, let's say, Muslim-owned stores or, you know, the similar. But at the bottom line, that is very true that people feel that the authorities are not really on their side. And especially if we look at the the issue of structural racism, structural Islamophobia, it also affects the perception of the population towards the authorities. Because when there are cases such as in Germany where we have found out that in the police forces, in the army, there are people who are connected to far-right movements, to nationalist movements. It doesn't create any trust.
So what should be done to tackle with this problem, not only in Germany, but also all across Europe? For example, in the German example, there is this anti-Semitism commission, which was set up just last year, and now Muslims demand it. So what do you think, Erhan? I mean, more security measures around places of worship would help it, or just to the recognition of the EU institutions of Islamophobia as a as a form of racism that could lead to human rights violations?
Indeed, there are some institutions, EU and Council of Europe institutions, which have been monitoring xenophobia, Islamophobia, and racism in Europe. EUMC was the old name, but the name changed later. Fundamental Rights Association, it became later. So these associations, these institutions follow xenophobia, racism, and Islamophobia. They issue regular reports. This should be done. But the main problem, as you mentioned, is reporting of the xenophobic, racist, or Islamophobic attacks. People mostly think that in Europe, Muslims or other people think that these kind of reportings will not be leading to anything. That is one of the reasons and that we have to fight with. Why? Because if people do not report particular or single attacks, incidents, authorities will consider that they are not happening, but they are there and quite wide.
That's the annual report. European Commission Against Racism and Intolerance warned that public anxieties about global political and economic changes were increasingly being exploited by those scapegoating migrants and minorities. So, Linda, why Muslims are targeted more physically and verbally than other minorities across Europe? Is it because there is no political cost for that?
I have to be honest, I'm not so sure if in every country the statistics speak for the fact that Muslims are actually the most targeted group, because at least in my native country, Finland, the hate crime reporting by the police college, it shows that racist and ethnicity-based crimes are higher than religion-based. But obviously, we also do have to consider that there is a lot of intersectionality going on with Islamophobia. It means that if a person of color is on the streets, he can be attacked based on the skin color, based on the ethnicity, or even based on the perception of his or her religious affiliation. And obviously, in the case of Muslim women, they are very much visible when they are people of color, but also when they are wearing the headscarf. So they are they are a high
open
target
targets,
of open targets of
So Erhan, far-right parties have been gaining votes and prominence across Europe, but this increase in vote hasn't been really matched by the participation in government. Why?
Still, Europe has functioning and working memory. The memory of the past, for instance, for Germany is specifically important here. Why Germany, we see this rise of AfD much more later than the other European countries, would be explained by that, but this doesn't mean that it is not there. It is also there. But Germany, with its constitutional system, state bodies, had some developed some precautionary measures to cope with this kind of xenophobic, racist, or Islamophobic activities of some marginal groups. People will understand that they are not the solution for the problems that make them angry. But there is a risk here, which was observed in the European history well. It was also a similar pattern when Nazis and fascists in Italy and Nazis in Germany were rising to power. You know, at the beginning, political center tried to cope with those parties, but later on they hijacked the political system. The only risk here exists, in my opinion, is a repeating of a similar pattern in the 21st century.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time now. Thank you for joining me on Straight Talk,
Thank you.
Linda.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Ayşe Süberker. If you've got any comments, do share them with us on Twitter with the hashtag Straight Talk. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.